XRP to $34. And no, that is not a typo. When I first saw that target, I nearly did a spit take with my coffee. 7 years of price drama might finally be coming to a head. And if this chart that I found is right, we might be in for a 1,600% moonshot. It's crazy, right? Well, buckle up, because I've got a story for you. Now, the other day I stumbled upon an analyst by a macro strategist named 𝗗𝗀𝘀𝗰𝗀 that kind of blew my mind here. Now, he basically suggests that XRP is ready to rip after completing a monster 7-year chart pattern. 7 years. That's kind of like 2 full crypto lifetimes. Now I know that it sounds just like another wild prediction, and I was super skeptical at first too. But something about this caught my eye. A double bottom pattern stretching back to 2018 that might just spell the end of XRP's long nap. Could XRP really be gearing up for a run to $34? I had to find out for myself, and what I discovered turned into a wild ride through XRP's history. Now, if you hold XRP or even just enjoy a good old crypto adventure, stick around. This one might be the most important XRP story that I've told in years. So, picture me on a quiet evening scrolling through crypto Twitter when I see this chart by Van Leggen with XRP and $34 target in the very same sentence. Now I audibly went, huh? 34 bucks? No way. I mean, XRP's around $3 right now, so $34 would be an astronomical leap, right? My first reaction was, this has got to be some hopium. You know, those who overly optimistic price calls we've all heard a million times over. But the nerd in me couldn't let it go without digging a little bit deeper. Because what if, just what if, there's actually something to it? And it turns out that Van Leggen's call isn't just a random number. It's rooted in a classic chart pattern known as a double bottom. Now, if you're not a chart geek, no worries here. Imagine the price is kind of like a basketball, right? It drops, it bounces back up a little bit, then it drops again around the same level, and finally bounces back up for good. That's a double bottom, right? Visually, you know, it's kind of like a W shape on a chart. Now, it kind of often signals that the downward trend might actually be over, and the market hit a low twice that it couldn't push lower the second time. Now, hitting its kind of gears for a reversal. Now, in plain English, it's a pattern that screams the bad times might be ending and good times are ahead. Now, XRP's story, it fits this W pattern, but on a much bigger, in fact, massive multi-year scale. So let's rewind the clock here, because context is everything. Now, I still remember the trail end of kind of 2017 into January 2018. XRP was on fire, right? Shooting up to around $3.31 at one point, and $3.86 at its peak. Now back then, you know, where all kind of thought we were all kind of geniuses, right? And don't deny it if you're around, you probably did. Okay, I had friends mortgaging them houses, right? And okay, well, maybe that's not so fair, but you kind of get the idea here. People were going all in on this thing. Then the party stopped, and by stopped, I mean the price fell off an absolute cliff, right? Over the next 2 years, XRP went down from that $3.86 high to around 11 cents by March of 2020. 11 cents. That's kind of like finding out that your $100 turned into $3.50. Ouch, right? Now that was the first brutal low, the first bottom in our double bottom, and as it kind of turns out. Now, I'm never going to forget that time, right? One of my buddies had bought XRP, you know, for near around $3, the poor soul, and by 2020, he wouldn't even respond in our crypto group chat anymore, right? We'd kind of poke fun like, hey man, XRP is on sale, you buying any more? And there would just be crickets, right? It was rough. But then 2021 rolled around and suddenly things were looking up. XRP had climbed its way back to about $1.96 during the spring of 2021. Crypto boom, if you will. From 11 cents to $1.96. That's a pretty epic comeback, right? Now at that point, a lot of us were like, yes, finally, this is it. In hindsight, that $1.96 region was more like the relief rally. It was the neckline of this giant double bottom pattern. So let me explain. In a double bottom W pattern, the highest point between the two bottoms is called the neckline. It's kind of like the do or die level then, right? And for XRP, that neckline was around $2, give or take a few cents. So let's think about that ceiling, right? Once broken, it turns into a floor. Now XRP hit that ceiling in April of 2021 near $1.96 and got smacked down. Classic, right? But that set the stage for part 2 of the W pattern. After mid 2021, crypto winter slowly creeped back in, and then came 2022. And oh boy, if you were around in mid-2022, you remember the absolute chaos of it, right? You had Terra Luna imploding, everything was tanking. It's kind of like the sky was falling in crypto land. XRP was not spared either. By June of 2022, XRP had slid all the way down to around 28 cents. From nearly $2 back to under 30 cents. Talk about whiplash, right? That was the second low, the second bottom, and while 28 cents was as gut-wrenching as the 11 cents, it kind of still felt like the cruel deja vu. Now, I'm not going to lie, around that time, even I wondered, is XRP ever going to break out of the funk, or is this just how it ends? Now, what's wild is that 28 cent low in 2022 coincided with a lot of despair, right? You had the Terra collapse, which was a big factor, and there was other near-ending things such as Ripple versus SEC lawsuit drama looming as well. FUD was everywhere. It was the perfect recipe for giving up. But then something remarkable happened. Late 2024, seemingly out of nowhere, XRP started ripping upwards again. It wasn't entirely out of nowhere though. A lot of people like myself were predicting it for the obvious reasons. There were some positive vibes, shall we say, in the space, like a big market-wide rally and, of course, improved sentiment around the Ripple lawsuit and, of course, the presidential election. XRP punched its way through that 28 cent area, climbed up and broke above the $2 level in November of 2024. And yes, it broke above $2, the neckline of the big W. Now, that was huge. Breaking the neckline in a double bottom is like your team making it to the playoffs. It doesn't guarantee a championship, of course, but man, it's a solid chance at one. So when XRP crossed $2 last November, the chart watchers, they were buzzing. And I remember sitting there kind of watching the candle charts on my screen, heart was pounding, thinking to myself, this, at least if this holds, we might be entering a new era for XRP. We'd have been here before, but this time it felt different. And indeed, XRP didn't stop there, did it? Right? It just kept on climbing and it hit around $3.40 in January of 2025. Finally, some justice after the XRP army, right? Or at least for the XRP army after that lawsuit. Some justice, nonetheless. Now, at around $3, a lot of early investors were probably breathing a sigh of relief or even popping some champagne. Now for me, it was vindication, right? After years of holding through storms of after storm after storm, seeing $3 plus again was like, yes, we're back, baby. But hold on, this is crypto. Nothing goes up in straight lines forever. So after that January high, XRP started cooling off. Now, here is where the real test of that double bottom came into play. See, after the breakout, it's pretty common for the price to retest the breakout zone. It's like the market asking, are we sure about this? Which was this breakout for real. Now for XRP, that meant sliding all the way back down to around the $2 neckline area over the ensuing kind of months, right? And oh boy, did it slide down there. From February through to July of 2025, XRP basically slowly drifted down from the kind of mid $3 levels back to around $2. Picture a rocket that launched, but then gravity just pulled it back to Earth to check if its engine was built up enough kind of thrust, if you will. Now, I'm going to be honest with you here. During that dip, I had flashbacks to all of the other, times that XRP, kind of raised our hopes but then sank. Right? Was this going to be another one of those fake outs? Now, I was nervously kind of chatting with people in our free educational Discord server about whether XRP would hold that $2 line. Sentiment was split. Some were like, here we go again, back to 50 cents incoming, right? Others were cautiously optimistic. I think I was somewhere in between, right? Biting my nails and leaning optimistically because the chart structure was still intact. Now, here is the kicker. XRP held the line for 5 long months through the market's ups and downs. $2 held strong as support. The former ceiling became a pretty darn sturdy floor too, right? Every time XRP dropped near $2, buyers just kicked back in. This was the retest phase, the make or break moment for the double bottom breakout. And if XRP had fallen back below that neckline, it would have basically shorted or at least shouted false alarm, breakout invalidated. But it didn't. You fast forward to today, right? Early August 2025, after months of consolidation, XRP finally picked back up again, right? The whole crypto market saw a bit of a kind of recovery this month so far. And XRP was like, all right, it's time to stretch my legs. It climbed back over $3, which for a lot of kind of chartists confirmed that the retest was successful. Now, Van Leggen certainly thinks so. He basically said, yep, the retest is done. XRP is ready to rip higher now. So, with the pattern seamlessly kind of confirmed, Van Leggen dropped his bold prediction. And here it is. From roughly $3 now, he says XRP's first target is around $34. $34. That would basically be a 1,600% gain from the $2 breakout point. Now I know, it sounds absurd, at least at first glance. I basically thought, okay, now we've kind of left reality and entered fantasy land. But then I read more into why $34, and it's rather fascinating. Now apparently, he isn't the only one throwing around that number, right? Another well-known analyst, XRP chart analyst if you will, has also predicted a possible move to $34 earlier, this year in fact. When I first saw that, my kind of skeptic meter kind of dialed back just a little bit. Here's Van Leggen's logic, history, right? He looked at what XRP did the last time it kind of formed a giant W, bottom years ago, double bottom years ago. Back then, XRP was worth basically pocket change, fractions of a penny to a few cents. But between 2014 and 2017, XRP traced out a rather similar double bottom structure on the charts. And when it finally broke out, it went ballistic. Now, from a neckline of around 2.8 cents all the way up to 39.8 cents. That is roughly a 14x jump. Now, Van Leggen is essentially saying, look, we have comparable setups now, just on a much bigger scale. So when I realized that he has rooted in historical comparison, it stopped feeling like just a random moon boy target, and more like a bold yet data-backed projection. Now don't get me wrong, nothing is ever guaranteed, but think about it like this. Many cryptos, in a strong bull run do a 10x or more from their kind of bear market lows. XRP's low was around 28 cents in 2022. A 10x from there is $2.80. It's already past it. A 20x would put it at $5.60, and a 100x would be $28. Well, $34 is like roughly a 120x from the 28-cent area, or a 17x from $2. Now, I can practically feel some of you guys rolling your eyes, and honestly, a part of me is too. After all, right, we've heard sky-high predictions for XRP for what feels like forever. So let me just be really clear here, and this one might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. It's important that you always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Now, neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video today is for entertainment and educational purposes only. So what am I saying then, right? And what it is that the pieces are there for something rather big. Right? XRP's chart flashed a pattern that in the past preceded a massive rally. Right? We've broken out of the 7-year range. We successfully retested that breakout, and now we're creeping up once again. But, you know, nothing is ever guaranteed. I've been holding XRP for quite a while, quite some time, and it's a reasonable bag, nothing too crazy, but enough that I care deeply about where it does go. If, and that's a big if, we start, approaching something like wild, like $34, I'm not going to be caught like a deer in headlights. I'm likely going to be taking profits incrementally. In fact, I've already set some alert triggers on my phone for key levels. And I'm thinking ahead here. Maybe put some staggered sell orders on something like Kraken Pro, which, by the way, is the exchange that I use for stuff like this. And yes, there is a link in the description, and that is an affiliate link that supports the channel here. So if you use it, I'd like to thank you in advance. Because, of course, if you do wake up one day and it's 2XRP at $10, $20, etc., the FOMO and volatility will be off the charts. Also, I know that some of you guys are probably wondering, should I buy now? Is it too late? Did I miss the train? I can't answer that for you. I'll tell you what I've done though, right? I have, personally been accumulating a little by little during that kind of $2 retest phase. Now, beyond the charts and the price targets, of course, there's the why question, right? If XRP truly does something crazy, like go to double digits, for example, that could drive that kind of fundamentally, right? Or at least what could drive it fundamentally, I should say, right? Ripple has been making strides with their payment technology. Some major banks and institutions dabble in XRP for cross-border transfers. And the big elephant, the legal clarity from the SEC case, right? If regulatory clarity fully opens the floodgates for United States investors or institutions to jump on back into XRP, that could be rocket fuel. And a sprinkle in of general crypto bull market, and suddenly a large cap coin moving 10x isn't so outlandish. But let me be real and bring it right back to the personal level. Right, this journey to $34, whether it happens or not, it made me reflect on why I got into crypto in the first place, or XRP in the first place, right? Back in the day, I was fascinated by the idea of fast, efficient cryptocurrency for banking, right? I rode the waves up and then all the way back down, twice in fact, right? Seeing this 7-year pattern play out kind of feels almost poetic at this point. It's kind of like XRP telling a long story, and we're possibly near the climax of it. So here we are, on the brink of what could be an explosive new chapter for XRP. 7 years of waiting for some of us, 2 massive bottoms, a breakout, a nail-biting retest, and now an ambitious target glimmering on the horizon. Will it hit that target? Well, the honest truth is that I don't know. Nobody does. Nobody knows, right? But for the first time in a long time, I am seeing a plausible path. I find myself checking XRP's price every morning for a little bit more enthusiasm. And every little move up kind of makes me just smile a little bit more. Not just because number go up, but because it kind of reaffirms that this story that we've kind of been talking about, and of course, if it moves down, I don't panic like I used to, because as long as it's, at least we're all kind of above that neckline, that the plot is still rather intact. Now, no matter what happens, right, this whole deep dive has taught me a valuable lesson. Patience and data pay off. Had I given up at 11 cents or 28 cents, I wouldn't even be here talking about $34 potential, right? Sometimes you need to just zoom out, literally and figuratively, to see the bigger picture. Now, I hope sharing my little investigation journey or investigative journey helped you see XRP from a new angle. Whether you're an XRP holder or a trader or just a crypto enthusiast, these are the moments that make the space rather exciting, when past patterns, present developments, and future possibilities all kind of converge into a big question mark. Anyway, I'm strapping in for whatever comes next. Maybe it's $5, maybe it's $34, maybe back to $2, whatever it is, I'm going to be here for it. Probably chatting with all of you guys on the Discord server about every tick on the charts. Now, if you've enjoyed this little adventure through XRP's past and potential future, don't forget to smash that subscribe button, and trust me, you're not going to want to miss what's coming next, whatever it is. It's going to be one heck of a ride.